Good morning, everybody. This is the OSG podcast. We are Oya's security group, and we help grow cybersecurity companies. I am Adam Gordon, a senior marketer with over $1 billion in exits, and with me is, as always, Dr. Fred Cohen. Say hi, Fred.
Hi, Fred.
And he is one of the luminaries in cybersecurity, and we explore the intersection of marketing and cybersecurity and our company OSG and how we help cybersecurity companies grow. And last week, Fred and I talked about the first step that we would take in our process, which is discovery. And when we met, we discovered that that indeed was, interestingly, the very first thing that either of us do when taking on projects, even though obviously marketing and cybersecurity is very different. So today, we're going to talk about, after we do that discovery, what might happen with a company that comes to OSG and says, help me grow. I'm a kind of cybersecurity company. I need to grow more. So Fred, let's talk about what happens.
Isn't it obvious? They accelerate, they become billion-dollar exits, and they make themselves wealthy while paying us some nominal fees.
Some nominal fee, that's right, exactly. Which is why we don't understand why everybody's not knocking on our door.
You mean why nobody is knocking on it? Well, but that's easy, right? Because building a better mousetrap, the world will not lead a path to your door.
No.
Being better at selling mousetraps, now you're going to get wealthy. I mean,
and then you don't even have to build a better one. You just have.
You don't even need a mousetrap. Of course, then you might go to jail for fraud, but apparently not in the U.S. today. just saying.
So let's talk about, clearly there are a few steps between us doing an analysis for a company of their current status and, being billion-dollar companies and having paid us only a few $100s or maybe a few thousand. So what are the
or a few $100,000
or a few $100,000 or some percentage? We're not greedy.
Yes, we are.
Well, I
who
like
you calling we?
Who you calling we, white man?
Yeah, now this, you're not supposed to say that anymore.
That's true.
Because that's potentially discriminatory to American Indians. And you have to tell the whole joke in order for that to work, because the context, of course, is that's Tonto saying that.
Right.
A Lone Ranger. So it's all right if an Indian says it, even if you're saying it as if you were the Indian. I've been watching a lot about comedy lately, and apparently comedians are getting in trouble for being inappropriately funny.
Yeah.
Apparently when people laugh and other people don't laugh, the comedians get in trouble.
Right.
Whereas, I really don't care whether they laugh, because I think I'm funny looking, so at least,
Well, I did acting for a long time, actually. I acted my way through high school and college. That was part of what I did for fun. And I can tell you that comedy is by far the hardest form of theater to do. It's really, really difficult. And boy, when you get people laughing, there's nothing like it.
As an actor, you're trying to act comedic, and that's completely different from things like improv, where you're actually just funny.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. That's true. So, I mean, if you want a really good, comedian who practiced like mad, George Carlin was fantastic at it. I mean, he really thought through it, perfected what he was doing, and delivered it, in an incredible fashion, as opposed to the Robin Williams type, who basically, was riffing mostly the whole time. Jonathan Winters is actually the
classic of that. Yeah.
However, we're not here to talk about comedy. I think, if we are, that's fine. By the way, if I look back at the last year, it's pretty comical. I'm thinking, it might be better for us. But how about humor for selling?
I think there's actually a relationship there, because of the difference between the comedic actor that you're just talking about and the stand-up comic who does improv and stuff like that. I think that's a pretty good analogy for moving forward as a company as well, because there are companies that jump on opportunities without a lot of analysis, and there are companies that are very careful about how they do that. One of the great things about our process is that our process is flexible. So whatever kind of company comes to us, we're able to help them do what they do in a natural way. We don't force fit them into a certain activity.
Yeah, me, I'm really planning very carefully to jump on every opportunity that comes up, no matter what it might be.
Of course.
But on the other hand, I'm not really jumping at the opportunity to work really hard on developing a plan that nobody's going to do.
Yes. And, we work really hard on plans that, we think will pay off for people and for us. So,
so this is not hard work. Just to be clear, hard work is, like when Are you gone again, Adam?
I just lost the last minute of what you just said.
Well, it wasn't important, so we're good to go. Keep going.
I'll just cut it out in the middle. So, so jumping on opportunities, and you do jump on opportunities, but you have a very thorough analytical process that you use as well. I remember one of the first conversations we had after we met, I was asking you about how you invest in companies. One of the things you said was that it's strictly a numbers game. And so there is that to consider as well when we look at growing companies is, what do the numbers tell us?
To be clear, it's not strictly a numbers game. I think I also told you that I'm not likely to invest in a company that's going to make money by getting more people addicted to caffeine, for example.
Right, exactly. You are very much wanting to.
There's an ethical issue in there somewhere, but subject to that, it's about rationality. But I also like certain things and can be irrational about them. So like Spock, I choose when to be irrational.
So should we start calling you Dr. Spock instead of Dr.
No. First of all, it's Mr. Spock is the rational guy. Dr. Spock was the
baby guy.
Yeah, completely different. So
yeah.
And so I have had children and now have grandchildren, so I guess I could be a baby guy, but because I really enjoy them.
And you're really into toys.
I am, that's true. But moving right along.
Yeah.
So helping to grow companies, eventually we'll get back to it. So the reason I do things the way I do them is because I've tried it the other way. So I write my monthly article on mistakes you can make, and as I explain it to others, the idea is, well, first of all, before I go there, I'm not running out of mistakes. So I thought writing a monthly article after a few years I would have to stop because I didn't have any more mistakes, but I found that no, I continue to make mistakes. But more importantly, the articles are designed so that not to prevent others from making the same mistakes, but rather because telling somebody not to do something. I've had kids. I told you, if you tell them don't put your hand in the fire, guess what? But on the other hand, once they've done it, as they get older, they see the wisdom of their parents in terms of the things your parents told you before, but not the things you're telling them now. So it's just the nature of things. But what I'm hoping is that as people make mistakes, they will, having read my articles, say, oh, wait a minute, Fred did that, and save themselves from the bad outcomes that could result from continuing down that line.
Yes.
So that's my social meme for the future is Fred did that. I'm sorry, it has to go, oh, no, wait, uh-oh, Fred did that.
Wait, we don't want to make that mistake.
Oh, Fred did that. Okay, we'll do something else. So I think, I learned from mistakes, and I've made enough of them in my many, many years and many hours spent, and I don't make as many. Although, there are the classic mistakes, which I never made because, starting a land war in Asia. But other than that, so what happens, of course, is after we get, start to talk to companies and spend that initial time. I mean, it takes a couple of months really to get to know a company well enough and characterize them. So we have studies that we do in 8 hours, right?
Right.
8 hours live online remote, ask a whole bunch of questions, get all the answers, and we have a level set, and then we can develop a reasonable, future path for them. It takes a couple of weeks, maybe a month to do that. But all of that is really prelude, because it's really then, now that we have some notion of, what's important and which directions and, the nature of what you have and so forth, there's that much longer effort that comes with the experimentation, because you have to try things. And so we talk about internal diligence when we do investment, or due diligence if it's for an outside firm, if we're not engaged with them. When you do this, in theory, you can do it in a week. Notionally, you can do it in a month. I think the record for doing due diligence at Keiritsu Forum is so far it's about 2 months. But as you've seen, Adam, from working with me on various companies, 4 to 6 months is not unusual, and very often it's more than 6 months. And it's not because you can't get there sooner. It's because the CEOs are learning along the way, and they're adapting. And as they start to adapt, they start to say, wait a minute, here's a better idea, a better path forward. And they don't want to continue to go down the bad path. But in practical terms, if you're going down a path that's a little bit successful and you find a much better one, you have to choose whether to throw away that one and embrace the new one, and the risks associated with the business collapsing or damage to reputation or loss of customers or what have you associated with that split. So for big businesses, of course, they have divestitures and so forth, but they don't seem to mind announcing a product and never showing up with it. But for smaller companies, they don't have the resources to do that.
Right.
So we find this all the time, and they call it pivots in the investment world.
Yep.
And so companies make pivots. So we're there to help grow the company, and so the CEO makes the decisions. Our saying is, we advise, you decide. And so we're there to offer alternatives and so forth, and that never ends. The periodic process where you have somebody that you now have known for some time, days, weeks, months, years, and that you trust based on that long-term relationship and the history of trustworthiness demonstrated. Those develop into relationships that last a long time. I've had people in cybersecurity environments, let's see, a couple of them have lasted more than 20 years. And eternally, so what happens, of course, is after spending 15 or 20 years working with somebody, and they've gone through 3 different companies and whatever else, they're taking you along with them because you bring a lot of value. But eventually they retire, or they end up no longer working in this case in a cybersecurity related effort or company that's So once you do, you're working for a while doing whatever it is, sales, marketing, finance, technology, what have you. Most people change at some point in their career into something different. And so we remain friends, but there's just, they're not in a position to engage me for the kinds of things that I can help grow the company with. So, which is fine. And they come and visit. So that's, the whole process is really one of building a long-term relationship and helping, people by providing that independent, outside, trustworthy opinion. And having the expertise behind it, right? I mean, if you don't actually know what you're talking about, it's not very helpful to get my advice, right? Sorry.
We all have to watch out for that.
I totally advise you to go swimming in the ocean, by jumping off a boat 10 miles from shore and seeing if you can make it. Okay, well, no, there is a context in which that's probably right, but probably not to grow your cybersecurity business.
Probably not.
Yeah. So it depends. If you have a business that's structured so that you have single points of failure, key man issues,
right,
or key person issues, and that key person is the person jumping off that boat in the middle of the ocean, the company might find that objectionable.
Maybe just.
Yeah, no, but look, I mean, as long as the company is okay without you, please enjoy.
Yeah.
I believe people should enjoy their lives.
So just to be clear to all of our listeners, Fred is not suggesting that you go out on a boat 10 miles out into the ocean and jump off and see if you can make it to shore, because that's not a good growth strategy.
Well, just to be clear, With some people I know, I would indeed make that suggestion. Just saying, I don't want to be universal. You know, there are some people for whom that advice, in my view, would be good advice.
Yeah, I can think of a few dozen right off the bat. But
no, you're thinking the never would be missed group, but I'm talking about the group of people that are, you know, fantastic athletes that do challenges in their lives.
Ah, yes.
You know, ex-Navy SEALs that are, you know, starting businesses and they do this as recreation because they like it.
Yes.
There's no problem with that.
Yes.
As long as your company doesn't depend on it, and I depend on your company. If I don't really depend or care about your company, then go ahead, it's fine.
So what Fred is alluding to, although it's lost in a lot of ocean talk here, is that one of the processes that we do after we've done an analysis and have a thorough understanding of who you are and where you are in the business is look at what the paths forward are, which is Fred is kind of alluding to here. And usually we find that there's at least a couple of good paths that a company can take to grow. And usually it's some combination of some kind of pivot if they've got a technology or a system that applies to another market, excuse me, or doing more of a land grab in their current market. And we have various options for being able to do both of those, for making both of those a reality. And we help companies do this, and sometimes they do it over and over. And they end up growing really big, or they end up being a very wide company in that they're into a lot of markets and generating a lot of revenue. And we like to, as OSG, promote that process, and we do everything we can to be able to help companies get there.
To the extent it's appropriate.
Yeah.
So it's a fundamental of business as opposed to companies, right? So a company can have multiple businesses, and in fact, you normally expect that a company, if it's going to last, is going to have business after business after business it goes into with different customer groups, and different things they're providing to those customers. And it's because of the natural cycle of business, right? So, you know, you start something, you invest in it, you know, and you invest more and more and more, and then it starts to generate revenue. And eventually, if you're successful, the revenue exceeds what you've invested and now starts to give not just positive cash flow, but profit. At some point, you're you know, making a lot of profit, and you're up that growth curve, and instead of something that's an early adopter, it becomes, you know, something everybody wants or everybody has. But then the curve flattens out as you saturate the market.
Right.
And so whatever share you have of the market, you can compete for more share back and forth, and that is the long-term story of the buggy whip companies, right? And there still is one in existence in Deerfield Village in Michigan.
Really?
Last time I looked, and you know, they service that local community, but you know, normally, you know, what's going to happen is that business over time is going to become obsolescent and then obsolete, and you know, your sales will fall off, your costs will go up to keep it working, and it dissipates and disappears. So the successful businesses always create the next curve like that next business curve, and they build one on top of the other on top of the other, leveraging their existing customers, leveraging their existing technology, their existing people. Everything you have, you leverage to produce more of whatever you're looking to produce more of, to grow that next business within your company.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you know, we have models of this. I mean, in fact, just this morning,
you were just showing me some.
Well, yeah, sort of. So before I was showing you those, one of our clients, I was walking through their sales sieve projections. Mm-hmm. And the concern here was multiple markets. So the model they have for sales is, you know, you obviously you take customers as leads and you work them through the sieve and eventually turn some into customers, and you generate recurring revenue and from those, or that's their plan. But some of them end up dead. You know, they're dead leads. You're not going to get them, but you might try to resurrect them later. So the question is, you know, how long should you wait? How many should you try and bring back? And when do you saturate the market? And so they're aiming to saturate, you know, their capacity to sell into local markets in a matter of, you know, 4, 6, something like that months. And it's a matter of how much you can invest, right? Because it costs more to get to more people more quickly.
Right.
But then ultimately the question was, so what does it look like when we go into the next market? So we just updated the model and showed them, you know, so here it is. We'll take into 3 markets, one after the other after the other. And now, you know, as one starts to get saturated, you don't want to wait too long to get into the next one. You know, you see, because you don't want to end up with a curve that starts going downhill before you go back up. So you're so trying to figure out how to time them based on, you know, the projections. So you have to make models and projections to do this well. And then, of course, you need the facts, right? So as you actually sell into the markets, you adjust the models to reflect the real numbers as opposed to the projected numbers, and project the future markets based on, you know, the existing ones that you know about, and get better and better at it to where you can time when to do what and so forth. So as companies grow and advance, they get out of this initial state where they're just trying to find somebody to buy something and service that market, and then trying to grow into that market. They then grow into this maturation process where you find new markets and new opportunities, and you try to figure out which one to go to next. Instead of that purely intuitive, I think this is interesting approach, you get into the combination of intuition plus experimentation plus analysis. And so you get to making better decisions. And of course, as you grow as a company, you have more runway, so you're not, you know, usually going to collapse the next day. If you're not modeling what's going on, then you won't know that you're about to collapse.
Right.
And that's how it works.
And that's I think one of the big differentiators about OSG is we don't just do hard analysis, we also do soft analysis. I mean, you were talking just a minute ago, Fred, about intuition. I think a CEO's intuition, a CFO, whatever, anybody in the C-suite, their intuition is extremely important. They've probably seen a lot. They're probably pretty familiar with what they're doing. And it's to a point, what is that, 10,000 hour point, whatever they call it, where your intuition starts being actually reasonably accurate. And you can actually see things pretty quickly that you couldn't before. And one of the things our tools helps you do is, you know, tell you if that dream is real or not. Is that a nightmare or is that a really happy dream?
So one of the things, of course, we see is that a lot of companies, a lot of early stage companies are started by people, well, they don't have a really right team. And as individuals, they haven't had that experience.
Right.
So we see a lot of, you know, and knowledge I should have been paying attention to.
Hold on, we just lost you, Fred. Repeat what you just said in the last 30 seconds.
I said that in my early days of engineering, I eschewed some of the areas of knowledge that I should have taken notice of. And many other engineers do the same thing. And so they don't know. And we have some mutual clients, you know, that they just, there's so much to know to be successful at a business. And you cannot stay focused in a deep, detailed level on everything.
No.
Nobody can do it if you're going to grow. You can do it to have a lifestyle business. You can know everything about your business. But if you're going to grow and get large, you need other people.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to work with, how to find other people, how to listen to them, when to take their advice and when not to, and how to not take their advice. You know, because you don't really want that really brilliant person you're working with to get unhappy with you. You know, you'd prefer that they be happy, but recognize that as good as their idea was, you know, we don't think we can do that right now, and here's why.
Yeah.
And they may disagree, and you know, depending on how important they are to you, you may say, okay, well, how about if we try that part of the time, and you go ahead and do that, and we'll help you to the extent we can if you also help us with this other thing, and we'll measure it. Because engineers understand measurement. So we'll measure it. We'll see how it goes and compare it. So, you know, this thing with projections, you know, you try to anticipate what's going to happen and project it, but without measurement, without experimentation, without trying things, it's all, you know, philosophy.
Right.
So when, you know, the rubber hits the road when you try to actually do it and find out, oh, that's why.
That's why nobody's in here.
Well, you know, I'm selling to the wrong person.
Yeah.
The person that I'm talking to really wants it. They really do. They think it'll be really helpful. They get it. They understand it. They see it, but they have to convince somebody else. And I'm not helping them convince that other person, and that's why I'm not making any money. Well, guess what?
And you know, if you go back to your famous persuasion diagram, You know, there's a lot of aspects to that. And, you know, not only is that true with people, it's true with markets as well. Sometimes we have clients who run up against a market where it starts spinning off in a funny direction and they don't want to pursue it anymore, and they have to figure out what to do next.
Right. Well, you got to figure out what to do next. That's the truth. And it is the end of the year and mostly the end of our time. So I think it's the perfect day to say, well, go figure out what to do next.
Yeah, it's about to be a new year. Let's figure out what 2020 is going to be about. And Fred and I want to wish everybody who listens to this a really wonderful holiday season. We hope you have all had wonderful Christmases and Hanukkahs and Kwanzas and Boxing Days and all of the rest of the stuff that happens at this time of the year. And Fred and I will see you in the next, well, officially it's not the next decade until the end of next year, but everybody is saying that, so I'll go along with it, in the next decade.
In 2020. So yeah, the other side of that is, you know, a lot of folks we've talked to over the last year, you know, some of them are working with us and making progress, and some of them have, you know, chosen not to. And I always like to tell the people that have chosen not to work with us that it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, we hope you succeed.
Yeah.
We think we all benefit when everybody does well.
Yes.
And for the folks that have come back to us after deciding not to come to us, then came back, you know, a year and a half later after they exhausted much of their resources, and then said, well, now that I'm out of resources, I guess I could use your help. I just want you to know that we still love you, but it would be better if you figured out you were running out of resources sooner by having us help you do that. Just saying.
And the ideal thing is, of course, we'll help you not run out of resources, but you won't know, and you'll know that you're not. That's
you know, so this is the trick, right? Cybersecurity, I hate to add at the end after we said such a nice, pleasant goodbye. It's a common cybersecurity thing. If you're doing it really, really well, nothing bad really happens.
Yes.
Which means that you must be doing too much of it because I don't understand what you're doing as your boss. So we'll slow you down, we'll get rid of it, give you less resources, but then things will start going bad. And when they start going bad, then we'll say, you're not doing your job.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
So if you don't want that to happen, you need to come work with us.
Well, if you don't want that to happen, you need to learn how to work in the environment to explain what you're doing to your boss, who is your customer, in that context.
Right. And that's what we do.
Have fun.
You found Happy New Year, everybody. Again, great holidays. This is OSG signing off for this week.